Today we're joined on the catch-up by Anna Wood from Circus PPC. Very
Hello.
nice to have you here, Anna.
Thank you for having me.
How's it going?
Yeah, good. Not bad. How are you?
Yeah, very good. Thank you very much. Aside from the boot on your leg.
Size from the boot, yeah. We don't need to go into that.
It is a needless style feature, but at
It
the
is,
same point,
it is.
I enjoy
It's
it.
actually been on the catwalk recently. I don't know
Right.
if you know Rick Owens, but he's brought out a couple of boots like this.
Well,
So
Look,
if I get another one, who's laughing then?
well, this is it. Someone's got to fill Kanye's void at some point, haven't they?
Exactly.
There you go.
Exactly.
Bloody hell, footwear designers of the stars. There we go. Didn't expect that for a kick-off. Obviously, again, thank you very much for making the trip up here from sunny Leeds today.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to get a little bit of an understanding first and foremost about yourself, your
Yep.
career in digital, how you found it, where you're at now, and again, sort of Circus PPC on the whole, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, of course. So I'll start with Circus. So we are a PPC only agency. So anyone who doesn't know, PPC stands for pay per click. So it's online paid advertising. We aren't full service, so it's the only thing we do. Rick, our MD, set it up back in 2009. So he used to work for a full service agency, and he was head of paid. Loved what he did, loved the PPC side of things, wanted to start up his own venture, just specialising in that. So that's what he did. Fast forward 13, what are we on, 14 years, and here we are. So yeah, we're 16 going on 17 people now. Great team. I mean, when I started, it was 6.5 years ago, so it had a slightly different feel, a little bit smaller, but it was still a great place to work, and I've grown as they've grown, so I kind of in a quite good position, and I've been quite lucky to start the time that I did doing what I do. My job is client services, so I'm head of client services. Day to day, it's just making sure our clients are happy. It sounds like a simple thing. I love it. It can be quite hard work. But my background, so I started with Circus and I didn't have any background in PPC at all. So they trained me up and gave me some experience with account management. I was doing that for 3 or 4 years, kind of worked my way up, and then made the move from account management to client services. So I've been doing that for 2 years now. There is somebody else working with me as well, so we've got a little team that we're building out, and yeah, I do love it. It's like kind of like the best parts of my old job that I liked before, and then transferred that over to what I'm doing now. So it's talking to the clients, liaising, going to the meetings, going out for lunch with them, getting to know them. It's a bit more personal, less of the technical. So, you know.
Yeah, I think that's the ideal scenario, isn't it? Especially in your realm with obviously Performance Max kicking about nowadays as well, and people sort of talking about the AI element of like the bidding and whatnot as well.
Yeah.
I think you said something there that rings very true as well, where you're talking about dealing with clients and you made it sound like the simplest thing in the world. I think from my end as well, like we hear odds and sods of what people say, like, and how client comms and whatnot.
Yeah.
And sometimes, especially when you're playing with the budgets that you guys play with online, I can imagine that those conversations aren't easy, and it's kind of like, oh look, we put 40 grand into this and our ROAS is maybe how do you combat something like that?
Yeah, do you know what it is? It's all about communication and relationship building. So this is why I enjoy my job, because your life is so much easier when you have strong relationships with people. I love going to the meetings. I love that aspect of it, because without that, if you do have a time where you've spent X and you've delivered minus Y, then you've got a little bit of leeway to go with, because they know that you're trying your best. You know that they know that you've done a good job beforehand. They trust you. You've got that. You've built that up with them for however many years. So if something does happen that's not so easy to manage, it's just a conversation rather than a complaint, I guess.
Yeah.
So that's what I try and do is not being reactive, is being more proactive and putting the time into clients, making sure that they're heard, so that if they do come to me and they have a problem, or the account manager and they have a problem, or we're trying to justify some sort of mishap, then it becomes a lot easier.
No,
Yeah.
and I think you're right as well. Like, it's that personal element, but
Yeah.
obviously we don't necessarily. I was listening to something the other day, and it was about how the digital world is trying to create like a one-to-one comms element in terms of like the personalization you can deliver
Yeah.
and the way that websites work. But it's almost quite an impersonal job, because you'll never, like, somebody could buy from one of your clients' websites and they'd never know who they were. They'd
Yeah.
never, like, it's not like old retail where you go in a shop and you'd be like, oh, you're right, Brian, I'm back again, that sort of thing. It's very much, oh, you're an order number and I can see where you're from, and I can see your journey around the site, but I don't know much about you. And I think it's that sort of transition as well. I don't know if you see it with the way that you guys work as well, in terms of getting people to a site. Is there more of a, I suppose, specialist element that's required to that? Is there a way of talking and tonality that you guys use? Like, what makes Circus special?
Yeah, I guess it's understanding the brand and what they want. They have a certain way that they market themselves, and we try and match that. So when they come on board, we'll have these conversations initially about who your target audience are. Do you have any brand guidelines? Is there anything that we can or can't include within ad copy? And try and match what's on the site, try and match what they're doing on socials so that it's a seamless journey for the user. Because you're right, if a user comes to the site and they're not familiar with the brand and they don't speak to somebody, it's kind of just that cold transaction, isn't it? Whereas if you make them familiar and then you build up some loyalty and you have that aspect in your ad copy as well as through all of the other messaging that they market themselves as, then it kind of helps with that journey. So I guess that's where we start, is looking at, okay, we're going to be showing our ads to these people. Are they the right audience? Is this the right messaging? How are they going to feel about seeing that and then coming to site and it's different? So just making sure it all matches up and it makes sense.
I think as well, you mentioned something earlier that you guys specifically do PPC.
Yeah.
And obviously, I don't know if this is a common thought trend, but you see a lot of agencies out there where they'll do PPC, social, SEO,
Yeah.
and then they have control over that journey from social to the website to Google Ads and whatnot to the site again. I think, obviously, you mentioned there being a specialist in PPC is good for that reason. Is there any other reasons as to why it's specifically PPC only, if you don't mind me asking?
Why we've set it up that way? I guess, well, initially started because of the passion that Rick had. And then we've built it up so that we're only specialising in PPC because people are interested in it. I mean, I got into PPC because my friend used to work for a PPC agency. And this was back in the day when it was all downloading spreadsheets on Excel and manually changing all the bids, and it was a long process. But I loved that because it was all technical, and it's a little bit dorky, and it's lots of data handling. So I got into it because I loved PPC and I loved that part of marketing. There are lots of people that work for full service and they dabble in all different aspects of it, and that's for them. But I think the team that we have and the people that work for us, they love what we do and they're really interested in it and quite invested. So because of that, it makes day-to-day a lot easier. It makes performance a lot better. People want to be there. There's motivation within the team. So being specialist helps us with that. And I'd say over half the clients that we get come to us because they want that. They want that specialist agency. So they'll have an agency per channel. And we fit into that. And what we do is try and work with all their other agencies as closely as we can. So we understand what they're doing. So it's not as if they're, paying this agency and this agency and this agency. They're all doing separate things. We try and work closely with them. So it's more cohesive. I mean, we've had partners in the past that we've worked with, and just the collaboration side of things helps that. You still have that kind of full service feel if you're the client, but the fact that we're all specialists is you're getting the best for your buck.
That makes sense, and I think that's where I was looking at so potentially when we hear of stories at this end, it'll be like, oh, the PPC agency is blaming the SEO agency, the SEO agency is blaming their affiliate agency.
Yeah.
I think that's what I wanted to understand a little bit there, was how do you guys take perhaps a different view of this, of like slotting into that whole marketing funnel, like you say, and not working perhaps at opposite ends, but working together on a cohesive plan per agency?
Yeah. I mean, I don't live in La La Land. I understand that these things do happen, and they have happened before. I've experienced, where you're trying to communicate with one of the other agencies and there's miscommunication, or you don't know them that well, or maybe they're in a different time zone, so it's hard to get hold of them. But for me, I just don't see the point in trying to battle with them, because it's only going to make you look bad at the end of the day as well. If you're not trying to get along with the other agencies that they're paying to work with and that they also value, then it doesn't look great for us. So, it works in our favour for us to have a good relationship with everybody that they work with.
I completely agree. And like I say, I think that's a really interesting angle to take. It's probably the angle that more people should probably explore rather than playing the blame game and looking around the room and doing that way. Yeah. Do you guys work on an international basis as well?
We do, yeah.
So one of the things that I was discussing the other day, and again, please feel free to edit this out at any point if this is a bit extreme, but I was speaking to a guy who does PPC in America, and he was talking specifically about the bidding laws on certain things over there.
Okay.
So, for example, vaping you might not be allowed to do in one state, but then you're looking at the things like assault rifles, for argument's sake, and you might be able to. And when, I suppose why I wanted to ask you this is the translation between the UK market, so us being on our tiny little rock in the Atlantic versus that big slab of land over there, is it that different to working day to day as well?
It can be. It can be. I mean, the markets are totally different. So what you think works really well over there, you take it. Sorry, over here, you take it over there, and it's completely different. So you have to do a little bit more research and put the groundwork in at the beginning to understand, you know, what keywords do we bid on? What's actually got a good conversion rate? How does the website work? Because everything's built differently.
Yeah.
And also, that's where speaking to clients at the beginning and understanding as much as you can from them and their background in PPC, taking history of the account perhaps and just looking at what's worked is really important because nobody knows it better than they do.
No.
And obviously the UK market is what we're specialists in, but it is possible to, you know, take some of the learnings that we've got here and move it over there. Because there's a lot of countries that are very similar. Like we do a lot of work with European countries and that has more overlap where we used to do a lot in Australia, that's quite similar. And then America's slightly different because like you say, there's different laws per state.
Yep.
There's a lot of things that you might not be able to do there that you could do here or vice versa. So it's just about trying to understand the market as best you can because you might be going in a little bit blind. But also that's where that relationship with the client comes in really handy. If you can nail that and understand what they're looking for and what's worked for them in the past, then take that forwards.
So I think we've spoke to a couple of clients that work with you guys in particular. I think the example is Kiddy's Kingdom.
Yeah.
And basically I think this is what you're leaning towards when you're saying about having that relationship with the customer. He basically may as well have said to us that he trusts like everything you guys say and he will implicitly just go, yeah, do that.
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting because a lot of people you speak to tend to have had, maybe not with yourselves, but other agencies have had a negative experience with PPC at some point. So from your angle as well, how do you start that almost re-education process is what I suppose you'd describe it as almost?
Yeah, good question. It can be quite tricky because they're coming into it thinking this hasn't worked for us before. Maybe they've still got a negative outlook on it. So you're having to not only prove yourself from the off, but having to readjust their whole vision of PPC. So what we tend to do is come in and I like to be as realistic as I can. I don't want to overpromise something because I think that's how you can get burnt.
Very quickly.
yeah, very quickly. But yeah, I try and look at what we have to work with and look at their account, look at what they're asking for, understand their objectives, come up with realistic expectations for them, and try and carry that out. But it's not necessarily like it's hand-holding, but the communication that starts really important. So I try and stay in touch with them a few times a week. We've got the account manager working on it day to day. Just make sure that they're listened to. If they've got any concerns, which they will voice at the start usually, then make sure I'm there to kind of try and smooth it out.
It's always a favourite, that one as well. And there was one where he's basically promised them something like a 200 to 1 ROAS or something like that.
Yeah.
And he was like, how can you do that without looking in the account? And I was going like, that's very true. Like, how can you know, like, how can you know this?
Yeah.
But we see it a lot in our space as well, where people promise that return on investment figure because that's what people want.
Yeah.
But it's physically impossible without, as you say, evaluating the marketing channels that they have, looking at the website on the whole.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know, it's kind of a tricky sort of subject to work around this, but it's the people who turn around and go, oh yeah, we will promise this. How, like, it's not possible. But I imagine you've seen a fair bit of that in your career so far.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that's half the reason why they leave is because they're not performing the way that they expected them to. The audits that we put together are incredibly thorough. So we do spend a lot of the time going through the account, looking at what's worked historically, what's not worked, and then putting a forecast together of where we think we could get to it, which, you know, half the time we can achieve it and it's not too far off. It's still a forecast. I mean, how did you choose what to wear this morning?
I was going to say it's by what's ironed, but it wasn't even that. So there you go. Valid point.
Weather forecast, you don't know if it's going to be 100%. Like
No.
you kind of judge it on the days leading up to it, what it looks like in the morning, and what the big guys tell you on the TV.
It's definitely the second I whip open the curtains and I go, oh, there's sunlight.
Yeah,
No.
yeah. What I'm trying to say is we use the data to kind of give a realistic view of what we think is going to happen. It can't be guaranteed, but I think a lot of the time it's overpromised just to get them through the door, which is what we're trying to avoid. So it's about, that initial audit, taking the time to go through it with them, and then making sure that they feel heard and nurturing that relationship from the beginning.
I completely agree. And like I say, I think that's the real difference is people do want somebody to listen to where they want to take the business to, but then it's not pandering to that and going, oh, we're going to make you a £10 million company.
Yeah.
It's a case of going, no, this is a realistic plan to move you up gradually.
Yeah, exactly.
And take that slow
and
path.
continue doing it as well. So it's not just about, say, the first 3-6 months, because we want that longevity too. We want long partnerships. So we reforecast every few months, just make sure we're on track and they're happy with the direction we're going. So we've always got a long-term plan in place. It's not just like, okay, you're coming on board, great, let's just send you off this way for 6 months, leave you to it. It's kind of that long process that we try and adapt to per client.
I find that, like, as you say, it's that whole adjustment process with what we've had recently as well with like inflation and whatnot, and the cost of products are generally rising.
Yep.
If you're not constantly undertaking that, you can't be aware of the business's margins, like the cost it takes to actually sell a product.
Yeah.
Like, how can you effectively run something like that as a marketing channel?
Yeah, this is a conversation I'm having a lot at the minute. It's just about the rising cost of everything. So if I have a call with a client, it's always something that I'll bring up, or if not, they'll mention it first, because of course it's on everybody's mind. And I know it's getting boring to talk about, but the fact is it's here. So we can't deny it. I mean, the materials are going up for a lot of produced stock, and then the shipping's going up. The margins are all coming down. And then, unfortunately, sometimes they will look at their outgoings and they'll look at their agencies and think, okay, let's do a cost cutting. So these are the conversations that we're having and kind of the challenges that we face at the minute around how can we help make it better for them, but also make it work for us. It's finding that balance.
I think we looked at something not long ago, and I think it was 2020 or 2021, and it was the average rise of cost per click was driven up a lot via the Amazon route as well. So Amazon starting to bid on terms.
Yep.
I think the figure itself was something circa 50%.
Yeah.
And like you say there, if you're a toy clothing retailer or something where you're shipping it in from China with the added cost of shipping as well, it's an absolute nightmare.
Yeah.
Like, how you can't just turn your prices up by £10 per product.
No, exactly. And in a lot of cases, they're just having to accept that this is the way it is and this is the level they're serving at the minute. But yeah, I think a number of our accounts, the CPC's doubled, especially since COVID times. The last 3 years, it's doubled. So obviously the pressure's on in all areas to try and make things work.
It's actually wild, isn't it? Like, I do very quickly want to talk as well about the awards on your side of things as well.
Yes.
So you guys have been getting a lot of acknowledgement recently, haven't you?
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, we've won 2 Agency of the Year awards this year. Thank you. Thank you.
There you go.
Yeah, I can't take full credit. It's the team that we have. They're amazing. But yeah, we've pumped quite a lot into marketing side of things, and we're getting shortlisted a lot, and getting recognised is great. Because we are a good agency, and we've put a lot of effort into it over the years, and yeah, to say that we've been named Agency of the Year twice this year is quite an achievement, I think.
It's pretty stunning, to be honest with you. And like you say, it's something where there's a lot of debate you always see on LinkedIn as well, where people say it's like a vanity thing. But at the same point, it's really not, because then, for example, if we win something at this end, we'll be like that. Like you mentioned there, it's the whole team that's collectively put this together. It's not just like an individual who's won an award.
Yeah.
And it's about people knowing that we're on the right track as well, I suppose, externally. Very quickly, we're going to do another bit around like sort of the type of clients that you guys work with, the industries you fit in. Is there a common industry that you tend to work in? Is it solely e-commerce? Is it not? How does it look from a Circus standpoint?
It's a good mix, actually. We're probably more focused towards retail, e-commerce side of things. We have been for a few years, and we've got great experience there. But it's a good mix. I think that also helped us over COVID as well, because we didn't specialise in a certain industry. We work with all sectors. So we've done quite a lot of work with iGaming in the past.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we had a few of those. And And then over time, we've just worked with a number of different brands, really good names. And yeah, it spans across multiple different sectors. All of our account managers have a few accounts, but we'll try and give them some variation.
Yeah.
So, yeah, all sorts.
I suppose that's the interesting point as well, is rather than just being like, oh, you work in fashion, for example.
Yeah, no pigeonholing.
No.
Yeah. Of course, we do have some people that they've come from other agencies and they've got really good experience with, feed optimization or whatever. So we'll say, okay, could you take on these accounts? And they'll say, yeah. So that works in our favor. We do have certain people that are good at, other aspects of it, like tracking or lead generation. But generally, it's a good spread. It's a good mix.
And I think as well, like, it's the variation between, like, you're talking there about iGaming in particular, and switching that back to another industry like fridge freezers or whatever. If I was going from account to account and not, like, being stuck in the same old, like, mindset every day, being like, oh, I'm looking at white goods all day long.
Yeah.
It's definitely keeping the environment a little bit more spicy. And,
yeah, it keeps it fresh. Yeah, it keeps you motivated. Nobody wants to work on the same thing every day in, day out.
No.
I think that's the beauty of PPC anyway, is that you can come in one day and Google's changed something and you're like, oh, great, my whole day's changed. Let's try and figure out what this is. But if you've got a range of clients as well, you can switch from one to the other. You're speaking to different people all the time. So it keeps it interesting, keeps the conversation going.
I'll tell you what I like to ask as well, as a part of, like, the client services world.
Yep.
What's the most interesting client request you've ever had?
Interesting client request.
We say interesting, it could be odd, it could be weird, it could be anything in between.
Can we not pay any management fees even though you did a good job this month?
I think that's everyone just trying to get away with murdering.
I think that might be everyone. No, I don't think I've had that many that really stand out. I
tell you what, so there was an interesting one recently where we were talking to someone, I won't name names.
Yeah.
And like you mentioned there, it was about the cost of the service. And they were, like, presenting them with the report, and they were going like, oh, this is what we've done for you. Like, it's improved your site speed by XYZ. It's done all this. It's improved, like, even, like, stuff down to, like, your SEO rankings and stuff they'd done on this whole report. And this guy was like, looked through it all, and he was like, that's cost me XYZ. I've made this. So what I want to pay you is 10% of what I've made.
Yeah.
And they were like, no, there's a contract.
That's not how it works.
It's a mad one. I was imagine turning around to, like, a car and being like, oh, well, I'm actually not going to pay that $8,000 or whatever the car was. I'd actually prefer to pay you $200 for it.
Yeah.
Let's just rip that idea up, shall we? But I think that's why I'm always interested in speaking to people in client services in particular, because there's some odd requests that seem to.
We do get a lot of requests for doing things that are probably technically outside our remit, but I think to me it just says that they trust us and they think that we know everything. Which we do have. You do working in PPC, you obviously do get a lot of technical experience with. Like the GA4 migration side of things, which we help out with, or general tracking on websites. You pick up things here and there that we don't technically need to do day to day, but working with the agencies, working with clients, you kind of get to know bits here and there. So we do get quite a lot of requests for, can you help with our back end stuff, and can you do this on GA4, and can you set this up, can you set this up? Where if we've got the time, the resource, and the expertise, of course, we'll always help out. But sometimes it's a little bit further than we'd know. Like, can you rewrite this whole web page? I'm not sure. I can give it a go.
Yeah, well, we'll give anything a go once.
I'm not taking any responsibility about what it looks like afterwards.
It's on fire afterwards.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
I don't know why I haven't touched on this sooner, to be honest with you. GA4 on the whole and Performance Max.
Yeah.
It's been quite a busy year in the land of Google, hasn't it? How are you finding it from your end?
The Performance Max side of things, I feel like I'm getting there with it. It's been around for, when did they release it? 2 years ago?
Yeah.
Maybe. So we adopted it straight away because it's not going to go anywhere. And we have good relationships with our Google reps who kind of talked us all through it and gave us a good understanding of what it is, how you use it at the very beginning. So I think that's worked out quite well because all the team kind of trained up on it from the start.
Got you.
So Performance Max, I don't have too many issues with. Outside of the obvious, you can't see much behind those initial reports. Yeah. But, we get drip-fed bits of information here and there from Google. They kind of release things every now and again where it gives you more insight. So, like the search terms thing, it's better than Smart Shopping was because you can see on the Insights tab, it does tell you what your search terms are. So, I don't mind it. Generally, do I want to say generally? I think it can be hit and miss with performance. It works or it doesn't.
Yeah.
So a lot of the time with Performance Max, we're switching back to standard to test it to see if alongside Performance Max it's performing any better. Sometimes it does. So actually we've got campaigns that are in standard, which is so old school now, but standard, maybe, not manual bidding, but smart bidding, and it outperforms Performance Max. Whereas sometimes it's working really well for us. I think it depends on the product, the user journey, how long it takes to convert, because it's supposed to be all encompassing.
Yes.
So it's top of funnel right down to bottom and remarketing. So yeah, I'm neither here nor there with it, if I'm honest. Don't love it, don't hate it, can work with it.
Can-do attitude, that's exactly what that is though, isn't it? I think the reason why, again, it's always fun asking this question because everybody has such a different experience with it.
Yeah.
I think if you're a retailer as well, we've spoken with retailers who are managing it in-house. And like you're saying there, they haven't necessarily had that conversation with a Google rep.
Yeah.
They haven't had that sort of almost training time to look at it. They've just gone, oh, cool, this is here and it's here to stay. I'm going to have to adopt to it at some point. And they've just seen like 20 grand budget disappear overnight and gone,
Yeah.
Like, that's that. But
yeah.
I think the biggest one we've heard is people saying that if you give it time, it will kick into gear and it'll start learning better. Like,
yeah, it takes a while.
But can you afford to take that risk?
Yeah, I know, that's the thing. And it is about having that trust of your clients because a lot of them don't like it. So you have to either retrain them in their thinking or if they're new to it, then explain what it is and go with it that way. But yeah, it can be risky, especially when it doesn't pay off at first, because there is that display aspect to it where you can't control where your ads show or when. So, I mean, we've got a script that we can run and you can see what channel, how much you've spent per channel. So that's quite good. But then you'll see display will spike and you can't really control that. So that's the downside of it.
I think I wouldn't sleep at night, to be honest with you. I'd be sat there going like, oh no, please.
Yeah.
Just be sat there watching spend come out and go, great. But no, I think, as you say, it's always interesting to get somebody's perspective who works in this field day in, day out, because we hear what we hear from clients, we hear what we hear from partners.
Yeah.
And again, it has been a mixed bag. It's not been something where people have gone, it's terrible, burn it to the ground. It's very much been a case of going, we're learning to adapt with it.
Yeah.
We're learning over time how to get the most from it and what we can do with it. Here we are.
Exactly.
So on the back of that as well, then, in the world of PPC or just e-commerce in general, what would you say the biggest opportunities are for retailers at present?
Okay. I would say don't be scared to buy into softwares and to look into options around optimizing your website. I think the website is key at the minute. There's loads of USPs that all of your competitors are offering. And if it's not necessarily your website, but your brand. If your brand can't keep up with it, it's really difficult to compete. So even if you've got the best ad copy, the best PPC agency, if your website's not great and your competitors are offering things that you aren't offering and you can't keep up with it, it's going to be very difficult for you to convert and make any profit off it. So I'd say that's an important side of things, is just kind of looking into what your options are around making your website better, making the journey better, the navigation on side of things, because it can help out with every channel as well, as you know. I think that's something that we try and work with clients on is understanding what could be better on site. That's obviously how we work with you guys as well. But understanding, okay, we've sent this load of traffic to the website. This is what they're searching for. This is the ad that they've clicked. It's all relevant. Once they come to site, something's happening. There's a disconnect. So we can't convert it. And unfortunately, once they get to site, they're out of our hands.
Yeah. So
we've got the job of bringing in that traffic. But once they get to site, it's on you guys a little bit as you're the owners of the website, the owners of the brand, to make sure that there's a reason to buy from you. I think as well with the giants like Amazon, who, like you mentioned earlier, I mean, they appear in every Auction Insights report on most sectors. So we see them all the time. There's not a lot you can do to compete with it just because of the size of the budgets. It's not direct competition, but because there's brands like that are selling either your product or something very similar in one click, and everybody knows the brand. It's really easy to buy. They have sales on quite often. you need a reason for people to buy from your website. So that's the main thing, I'd say. In terms of like the future, also it's kind of from our perspective, I guess, working with Google is a main thing, because I know the last couple of years have changed quite a bit, what with the features that have been released, the changes that have been made, like moving to GA4, Performance Max, lack of insight, lack of reporting, people not saying yes to cookies is an issue because we can't track. But if we don't adopt the features that Google are releasing and we don't play ball, you're going to lose out. I think the way that we're trying to tackle it, and that's the kind of the attitude that we're taking, is if we don't do these things, then there's no gain. Whereas we're trying to get ahead of the game. We're trying to make sure that GA4 set up. I mean, UA's gone now, so if you don't have GA4 set up, you've got no tracking unless you're using Google Ads. Getting things like enhanced conversions, consent mode set up, just to make sure that you're future-proofing your account, because at the moment you could be losing, I think Google report up to 70% of sales you could be losing if you don't have this kind of tracking in place.
Ouch.
Yeah, it's massive. It's massive. So that's why things like enhanced conversions adoption for all retailers is super, super important, because it's only going to continue going like this. I mean, was it Firefox, Internet Explorer were the first ones to, by default, not track you?
Yeah, but it was, wasn't it? Firefox, I think it was.
Yeah. And now it's pretty much every browser. So, yeah, losing up to 70% of your sales through tracking is a scary thing. I mean, you're still going to see it on your back end, but if you can't attribute where it's coming from and you have no source and you don't understand what your users are doing on your website, then how do you improve?
Well, this is exactly it. And one of the big things we're focusing on now is, it sounds a really simple question, but it's asking retailers, do you actually look at your own site? Do you take a user journey through your site, or even from your ads and whatnot as well? Because the biggest thing we hear is that people turn around and go, oh, well, I spend tens of £1,000s on ads. And it's like, that's great.
But what's happening with that traffic?
Yeah. Like, what if you're not gathering a remarketing detail off them?
Yeah.
What if you're not showing them, or you get to like a landing page for a product and then it's out of stock? Like, great, they've come specifically for this. What is the point? And again, it's taking that more of that view of retailers looking through their own buyer journeys and actually switching on for themselves, because I think it's like, someone described it to me before as where people have a baby and they think their baby's the most beautiful baby that you've ever seen. But realistically, it may look like a foot or a potato.
Yeah, but you can't slag off the baby.
No, you can't.
You can't say anything nasty about the baby.
And they'll only get angry about it as well. Like, they'll be like, I've spent millions on this and you're saying it's a waste of money.
Yeah, don't want to rip it apart, but perhaps we look at this. X, Y, Z. Yeah.
That was a proper horrible analogy. I probably won't do that again. I think we'll wrap this up in a second, Anna, but I want to find out now what's next for Circus in 2023 and beyond.
2023 and beyond. Hoping for one more Agency of the Year award.
One more?
One more.
When is this, do you know?
No, I don't. But we're shortlisted for a few awards this year. So hopefully get a few more of them in the bag. A little bit of recognition. Get a name out there. That'd be nice. And beyond is growth. I mean, we're 16 now. 17 soon, got a new starter, working with really good brands. We're not in a position where we have to say yes to anyone. You know, we have a choice of who we work with. So I think moving forwards, we've got good ambitions for next year, good targets in place that we want to hit, and I think it's doable. So yeah, for me, it's the growth of the team and growth of the client base. It's a winner.
Marvellous. Thank you very much, Anna Wood.
Thank you for having me.
No worries.